We're going to go through a song called Believe by Mumford Sons. And Mumford Sons, I was talking to Jonathan, Mumford Sons is one of those groups that has been really important in my own life. Does anybody know who Mumford Sons is? Can I get a... Okay, good. If you don't, you're welcome. These guys are they're great. And they started out kind of as more of a folky band and made a switch a couple years ago to more kind of some mainstream stuff. His father, Marcus Mumford, was a pastor in England for 20, 30 years in a vineyard church. My parents, when I was growing up, he was a common name in my family, John Mumford. And so a great teacher. Marcus led worship growing up through his church and had these kind of, in fact, his wife, who's an actress, they met each other at a Christian youth camp when they were kids. I think her name is Carrie Mulligan. And so he has grown up in faith and has really wrestled with it. And he is wrestling with it through his poetry and his writing a lot. And so I have found that poets often and artists are more helpful to me than theologians in time of crisis. Often a theologian will bring a scalpel and try to cut, where an artist might bring a feeling that sits with me. And I find that often Marcus's words, he did a solo album called Grace, I think. And we saw them when he was in town as a solo. He disclosed that he grew up and was abused in the community that he was a part of as a little kid, and had never talked about that. And this album is really his work through that. You guys come on up. And so I find that his work is really amazing. And this song that we'll sing today, or that we'll hear and then sing today, called "I Believe" or "Believe," he's really struggling with the faith that he was given, the experiences he's had in life, and how he reconciles those two. And so he, in the chorus, says, I don't know if I believe. And so I wonder if any of us have been handed a faith that we have taken in and attempted to live with as much fidelity as we can. And we get to places where those things that we've experienced and those things that we're taught don't necessarily line up. Anybody here struggle with any of that? It's just me. You don't have to raise your hand. But it's helpful because I'm... and so partly what we're talking about in this class is how do we move towards a mature spirituality? Is what it mean to be Christian... is what it means to be Christian that we are handed a faith like a medallion that we just rub and we keep shiny. And that what the whole purpose of is when we get to heaven, whatever that is, that we hand back to God our shiny medallion and we say that we kept it shiny. Is that faith? I don't think that that's faith. I think that there's a real difference between belief and faith, and we'll talk about that. A couple weeks ago, I suggested that faith might just be the internalization of a dependable relationship. Let's say that again. What if faith was not and did not start with theological propositions? I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe. But what if faith was more like an attachment to a really healthy person? What if faith was a dependable relationship that when you feel the ice cracking beneath you, you hear a voice beneath the ice saying, I got you. It's okay. I won't leave. pick up the freaking phone and call somebody. You don't have to carry this alone. Like, what if that was faith? And I'm beginning to think that that is the type of mature spirituality that we have to head towards. But it takes us through some scary places, right? Because I don't know about y'all, we'll talk about this in a second, but I was taught that faith meant unwavering certainty. Yeah? But I don't know about y'all, and let's sing, then we'll talk. How about that? I'm going to have you guys for a second. And listen, these folks will sing at parties, at bar mitzvahs, quinceañeras. I'm serious, they are so hireable, so go.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, we'll just do the chorus real quick so you can hear it. We would love for this to be sung where you feel free to sing along if you want to. There's never any pressure, but let's do the chorus a couple times and kind of get it in your mind. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe everything you're trying to say to me. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe everything you're trying to say to me. Perfect. Sing that when we get to it, okay? You may call it in this evening, but you've only lost the night. Present all your pretty feelings, may they comfort you tonight. And I'm climbing over something, and I'm running through these walls. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe everything you're trying to say to me. Beautiful. And I have the strangest feeling that your world's not all it seems. So tired of misconceiving what else this could have been. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe everything you're trying to say to me. So open up my eyes, tell me I'm alive. This is never gonna go away if I'm gonna have to guess what's on your mind. Say something, something like you love me. Lest you wanna move away from the noise of this place. Well, I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I wanna believe everything you're trying to say to me. So open up my eyes, tell me I'm alive. Things are never gonna go away if I'm gonna have to guess what's on your mind. So open up my eyes, tell me I'm alive. This is never gonna go away if I always have to guess what's on your mind. Well, I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe everything you're trying to say to me. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe don't even know if I believe everything you're trying to say to me.
Yeah.
Okay, the first reading comes from Luke 17, verses 5 through 10. The apostles came up and said to the master, "Give us more faith." But the master said, "You don't need more faith. There is no more or less in faith. If you have a bare kernel of faith, say the size of a poppy seed, you could say to this big sycamore tree, 'Go jump in the lake,' and it would do it. Suppose one of you has a servant who comes in from plowing the field or tending the sheep. Would you take his coat, set the table, and say, 'Sit down and eat'? Wouldn't you be more likely to say, 'Prepare dinner, change your clothes, and wait table for me until I've finished my coffee? Then go to the kitchen and have your supper'? Does the servant get special thanks for doing what's expected of him? It's the same with you. When you've done everything expected of you, be matter of fact and say, 'The work is done. What we were told to do, we did.'"
And then this is not Matthew 22.
You shall hold correct beliefs about the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall convert your neighbors who do not hold correct beliefs, and if they will not convert, you shall defeat them in a culture war. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
Now this is Matthew.
"Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" He said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and all the prophets."
Thank you. I often thought that the Matthew that Leslie read, "You shall convert your neighbor," because they don't hold the same belief system. And then not maybe start a cultural war. Sometimes it's just judge the heck out of them. You know, maybe they're the folks that are going to be going to hell. And then that's kind of wakes up my, that kind of judgmental part of me. You know, the church lady that I carry around inside of me. That comes out at really places that try to protect something. Well, and that's special, and I can just judge, but act as if I'm not because I'm just doing the work of God. And then Jesus comes along and says, it's about love. But somehow we've turned love and faith into correct belief systems. Because I think at the end of the day, most of us feel pretty out of control. There's parts of our life that we don't know what to do with. And powerlessness for us as human beings is a really difficult thing to be confronted by and to live with. And so we create these intricate defense systems that allow us to numb the pain of living and the existence of living. And so often religious institutions and religion can become something that can be a novocaine to the pain of our life, the fear of death. The fear of being out of control, watching our children making decisions that we cannot and would not make if we were in control. Controlling the behavior of a spouse, a boss, being confronted with past that we often don't know how to make peace with. And so our belief system can be something that sits in the middle of that we control. And then we come to the life of Jesus, and Jesus doesn't talk about belief a lot. He talks about faith a heck of a lot. Talks about love all the time. And I wonder if often it's a way that we don't have to face ourselves, that we get hyper vigilant about policing the borders of our belief and other people's belief. Because to be powerless, to stand in the place where I have come to the edge of my power as a father, as a husband, as a Christian, as a friend, is a really frightful experience. And some of you are there. Some of you have dealt with that. Some of you have made friends with that. Some of you are running from that. Whatever that is, that binds our humanity together in a way that I believe that the very life of Jesus has something to say about. And so we come to the text that Gary read today, where the disciples show up and says, Jesus, would you give us more faith? Which is like the question I ask. It's like a quantity deal, right? Because I don't know about y'all, but I feel like the faith that I have leaks out the side about 8 a.m. And that's when I get up at about 7:50, right? And I got about 10 minutes of space before my consciousness comes off, and I'm just freaking out. I'm trying to control things. I got things to do. So the disciples come to Jesus, and they watch in the way that he lives. Not as the way that the religious, the scribes and the Pharisees live. Not as the ways that the politicians live. Not as the ways of that their whole cultural construction of reality has given them. He's living in a different way. And they say, we need more faith. And then Jesus does this odd thing. Is he actually says, actually you need less. It's not the size. It's not the amount. And so I think that there's something in the way that Jesus teaches and the way that he shows up. Because often I think if I just had more, then my life would be different. If I had more, then maybe the outcome would be different. If I had more, then maybe I wouldn't feel this way. Does anybody ever experience that? Has that ever been a prayer or a sentiment that you've had around your own kind of religious or spiritual experience? It is mine. I grew up in the buckle of the Bible Belt. I mean, it was where the buckle was manufactured, I think. I mean, it was... and I spent the first half of my life deep in kind of a fundamentalist evangelical culture, and they gave me so much. So often I poo-poo those people, but I don't. Well, I do mean to, but there's been a deep benefit as well. I grew up and knowing the Scripture. Right, I was on a Bible quiz team through 12th grade. Bring it on, folks. Let's go. And so I know Scripture. My mother, this is crazy. God rest her soul. She made us fast as kids in elementary school through junior high. I was a kid. She withheld food. This is I would have called my congressperson at this point, But we fasted as a family on Sundays, Saturday night to Sunday. And through after church, we would go home and not watch the Dallas Cowboys play. We had to memorize Scripture. And then after we memorized Scripture, we could watch the Dallas Cowboys play, right? But by the time I was in high school, I had memorized all of the Sermon on the Mount. I had memorized a chunk of Colossians, half of the book of James, a slew of Psalms. And that, it was about information. It was about hiding the word in your heart, right? And so the first half of my life was really about performative measures of my faith, the information that I needed in my faith. They handed out the Best Christian Citizenship Award in my Christian high school. Guess who won? You would be correct. 3 years in a row, baby. It didn't help me much in rehab. Just saying, folks. And so anytime that there was like a wrinkle in the matrix, I'd shove it down. Anytime that there was something that didn't make sense to me in a biblical narrative, I would say, Anytime my experience of wanting rivers of living water that might flow out of me did not match actually the darkness that I didn't know what to do with inside, and that I developed a whole other set of behaviors to numb in my own addictive behaviors, I never questioned. I just shoved it down. And over time, it became like an onion that was peeled. And my belief system was peeled away and peeled away and peeled away until really there wasn't a lot left there. And so my cry for more, I just need more faith, was something that was never answered. It wasn't helpful. It was always turned back to the intellectualization of faith. So faith for me began to be an intellectual agreement to particular ideas or doctrines. That makes sense? So what it meant to have faith was to hold these ideas. Now, these ideas felt like that they broke down in my real life, and I didn't know what to do with that. That's where the onion was getting peeled. And so I would come back and just kind of prop up the doors, hold the thing together, think if I could just earnestly believe this, that something would happen on this side of my life that would be effective. And I began to doubt. And the system that I grew up in, though, doubt was antithetical, was anathema, was the thing that you could not do if you were a person of faith, right? Anybody here experience that? I mean, I knew that God loved me. I knew that the Spirit of God was deeply compassionate. The thing I could not do was to question the very reality of God. And so it put me in a pickle. It put me in a space that I didn't know what to do about or with. And what I want to say is that if you have ever been there, if you are there now, if you're not, some people, like my father-in-law, have been granted a faith that has never wavered. And I don't think he's covering stuff up. Does that make sense? I mean, I think the dude is like solid and faithful, and it's given to him. I don't know. It's a freak show to me. You know, I mean, he just knows he's loved, has always known that, has just acted out of that. So I don't want to kind of set up a tiered system here. What I do want to make space for are the variabilities of our human experiences in our own spiritual lives. And each of us go through different things. That has not been my pathway. And so what I want to say, that for those of us in this room that have toyed with doubt, have doubted, have walked away, that is absolutely necessary for your journey, for some of you. Doesn't mean you're doing something wrong or bad. Doesn't mean that you're going to get cancer or your stocks are going to fall to the floor. It means that often, this is what Tolstoy says about doubt. It is not as a child that I believe and confess Jesus Christ. My Hosanna is born of a furnace of doubt. My Hosanna is born of a furnace of doubt. And what I want to say in this place, and what a mature spirituality allows for, is the fact that we don't have to keep our doubts secret anymore. I think it's hard enough having doubts. I think it's downright almost impossible in a community of faith when you have to pretend like you don't have them. And I think that that's often why people end up walking away either from the church or from intimate relationships, because it, as I say all the time, and as the program that Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me, that often I am judging your outsides by my insides. And quite frankly, my insides, I doubt and I believe. And my doubt has become a companion to me. It's become, she is relentless as faith is. She has taught me what faith could never teach me. Propelled me to the dark night of the soul, where I have understood a presence that is deeper and beyond doubt that I don't have words for. That my Christianity, often we're given a map, these mental maps is what, paradigms is what scientists will call them. We're given these mental maps, and we're said, this is the map, this is the belief system of your life. And we're handed these maps. But often we get to the edge of the map and we don't know what to do. It's as if the road runs out for some of us. And so we end up finding ourselves in a cul-de-sac. And we spend our faith journey in a cul-de-sac. And some of us get to the end of the map and we think, I don't know if I believe all the things you're trying to say to me. Right? And so often for some of us, the end of belief is the beginning of faith. That makes sense? Often when our belief systems, because the church is duplicit, because of the sex scandals that happen all the time in the church and religious structures, because the folks at Mercy Street used to say, all you people want is my money. Because often kids and young adults are leaving not because they don't think that the church believes something. They just don't see us following what we say we believe. And they're not willing to be with a bunch of folks. They've got pomegranate smiles on and aren't really working it out. Does that make sense? So often we come to the end of the Christian map we're given and we don't know what to do. It's like the t-shirt I talk about sometimes, or the Spanx. One size fits all. This is how you get to heaven. And we get up to the intellectual, experiential part, and often we don't know what to do. And that's where those of you in this room that are in that space, have been in that place, struggle with that space, I want to tell you that there is roads beyond the map. That the Spirit of God is beyond the map. And that often we get to stages of our own faith, and that religious institutions that are born in the first and second stage of life can only give you what they have. Does that make sense? There's nothing wrong with the Methodist Church often that I grew up in. It's all they had to give me. And they gave it to me a lot. And it benefited me. But it also kept me small when I was wanting to grow. It also was not helpful to me when my mother had cancer, the answers that they gave. It was too small. The map wasn't big enough. And so often we find ourselves at the edge of the map, and we want to be faithful to God. We want to be faithful to the Spirit of Jesus. But we also know that I have to be faithful to myself and my own experience. Does that make sense? And that often what these kind of faith communities do is they birth this deep belonging. And so to leave the map is not just to set out on your own. It's also to leave a whole section of your identity of people that love you, that say the same things, that you worship together, you go to camps with, you pray with. They all say, we believe the same things, don't we? And to step off the map often is a bridge too far, because at the deepest part of us, we want to belong. And often we stay in religious structures that are very tight. And we will say things that we have not experienced or we no longer believe because we really desire to belong. And I think it's time to create communities of faith where doubt is a part of it. Where, yes, there's maps that we have, but you're going to step off the map sometime, and that doesn't mean that you should not belong. It means that we need to, as we say around here all the time, we need to walk each other home. Now, you're going to have to take your own journey and walk your own journey, and that will look very different to you than my journey, but we can walk together in it. And that's why the new type of spirituality that we're discovering in this class has more to do not just with the map, but also with vulnerability, with time spent with each other, with sharing life together, with our struggles together, showing up in each other's lives and asking these questions together. Because our faith, as Tolstoy will say, is born of a furnace of doubt. And that is not only okay, I think for some of us it's deeply, deeply necessary. I was talking to a friend here who has been reading Falling Upward from Richard Rohr. I don't know if you know that book. It's really a good book. This dude's a Catholic guy and a Catholic priest who wrote this, and he and I think it resonates. I was wondering why it resonated with me so much on a journey when I was leaving faith, when I lost my faith. And there was a time about 12 years ago when I could not call myself Christian. I had an advanced degree in theology, and I had a PhD. And I looked at it all, and I walked away for a season of my life. And it taught me a ton that I'll talk about in a couple of months. But this book began to give me some language and some normative. It started giving me a different map. And because I think what we will come to, and this is what I have realized, that often the faith that we inherit stops working. That the faith that you inherited as a child often will stop working. And because it's tied to so much of our own mental maps, our own paradigm system, the way that the world works, our own belonging systems, that to leave that is almost a crushing endeavor for our identity. It creates really a crisis, a deep, deep crisis. And what I've learned about identity development, to be in a place where you don't know who you are, where you don't know what's going to happen, we can only handle that so long. You look at retired statistics, folks that retire. Some of those folks just kind of freak out after a while because they don't know, who am I if I'm not working? You watch mothers and fathers send their kids and become empty nesters. Oh my gosh, my entire life was into the support of these and the love of these. Who am I if I'm not needed in this way? And it can put us into a crisis. Some of us are like, woo, but that's not true. There's a crisis that we feel, though, often in these spaces. And what I want to say is that often our spiritual identities, our social identities, our mental maps of the way that it is, heaven and hell and all this other stuff were given. And to think that there might be a different way, or maybe all the belief systems that we're handed may not be the only way to think about these things, is deeply difficult. And so you come to hear a person like me to prop up your belief that you don't believe, but at least Matt Russell believes it. And so you come not to restore your own faith, but maybe there's some dude in the community that believes all this stuff in the way that you're supposed to believe it. And what if I say to you, I don't know if I believe all the things you're trying to say to me? Do you start to freak out a little? You should. Because the way of faith has to move us beyond belief. Your faith that you inherited as a child will stop working. It just will. I was handed a faith that said, the fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. If anyone is sick among you, bring them into the elders, have them pray over those that are sick, and they shall be restored. Ask anything in my name, and it shall be done unto them, unto you. And when you are holding the powerlessness of cancer, when you are holding the powerlessness of your own addiction, when you are holding the powerlessness of a child that you cannot control, when you are holding the powerlessness of your own self-image and shame, there is a gap that appears between the faith that I was handed and my experience as a human being. And either I have to internalize more shame, you're not doing it right, you little worm, or whatever spiritual prayers we pray over ourselves. Or we begin to realize maybe the map that I've been given has brought me as far as I can go. I'm not saying the map of Jesus. I'm saying the map of your culture, the map of your religious structure, the map that you were inherited out of your family systems. It's taken you as long as you can go. And this is why Jesus says this. Who are my mother, brothers, sisters? Those that I'm in a relationship with. There is a necessity to begin to develop relationships that are like family. Not the family you grew up in, the family that now that you need in this time of your life. Some of you have found it in small groups. Some of you have found it in recovery groups. Some of you have found it in intimate friendships. But we do these things in order to get to the edge of our map and be able to hold hands with folks and say, I don't know if I believe. And we take a step. And the step off the map often is the hardest first step. I want to, okay, wow. I have like 3 more weeks of this, but so I'll try to wrap this. I think doubts are scary for a couple of different reasons. If you're a person in recovery, you can go to a recovery program. If a parent dies or someone dies, you go to a grief support workshop or group. If you have experienced a miscarriage, there are folks in this church that will meet with you, divorce recovery workshops and groups. But what if you lose your faith? There's not a group that you can go to, is there? So often our doubts cause us to really suffer in silence, to really wonder in silence, to bear that in silence. The origin of the word doubt is helpful to me because it derives from the same root as duo or double, suggesting that we're in 2 minds. And the 2 minds wrestle with this tension, pulling us into, I think, different directions, leaving us often in distress. 2 places. And one of the things that I have found that is the first often casualty of doubt is simplicity. It might be innocence. To be innocent, the root word of innocence is to not be wounded, to bear no wounds. And often when we get to the edge of the map of the faith that we inherited and we take a step off of that map, we begin to see that the first thing that we struggle with is the loss of simplicity, the loss of innocence. And this doesn't happen just in faith, it happens in science as well. It happens in other domains as well. I was reading a book where Albert Einstein said that when he was in this midst of discovery that would not work out, that he was coping with data that took him off of his own scientific map. He said this: "It was as if the ground had been pulled out from underneath me, with no firm foundation to be seen anywhere in which I could build anything." He's talking about scientific data there, folks. You add that to a whole paradigm, a faith system, a way that you see the world. And it's really difficult. So what I want to say in this place is, number one, we are a people that are going to walk with each other when the map ends. Is this what we're going to do? That doubt and faith are kissing cousins, that they're here to inform, that they're here to be of mutual help to us. One of the things that Brian McLaren says is that there are really 4 stages of kind of doubt or faith. Is that we're handed a faith really at the beginning of simplicity, where really the questions are about being right or wrong, who's in and who is out. It's about really pleasing authorities. It's about making sure that the big people, that you say the right answers to the big people. That's what confirmation is about. The key values are really about obeying, making sure that the rules are kept, staying faithful to the traditions. There is good and evil. There is right and wrong. It's really simplistic. The only way out of simplicity into complexity, which is the next stage, is through doubt. I don't know if my parents are perfect. I remember I thought my parents were perfect. Then there was some things that happened that I realized, oh, my dad's as messed up as I feel. That's crushing, right? That doubt, that sense of complexity, that, oh, not everything is as I thought it was. And so the next stage really of our own faith development is through complexity, where we are more independent, where we see things really through the lens of succeeding and goals, where we don't need authority figures as much as we need coaches, where there are winners and losers, there is heaven and hell, but we need someone to guide us, not direct us. We need coaches. And really the only way out of complexity into what I think maybe we're talking about this morning, to perplexity, is through doubt. Maybe it's not like that. Maybe everybody doesn't have our own interests at heart. Maybe religious leaders can screw up. Maybe, and we begin to ask questions, and it moves us to a perplexity. It moves us to a place that we don't know what to do. Often, this is where we find mystery, a mystery of our faith. We say it in communion, if you've taken communion ever. We say, let us proclaim the mystery of faith. And then we say stuff, but I don't know what that means, actually. I think we ought to be silent. Let us proclaim the mystery of faith. It's a mystery that we're drawn into. That when the disciples asked Jesus, we want more faith. What Jesus says is, I'm going to teach you how to love. I want to be right. I'm going to ask you to forgive. But God, I want to make sure that I'm standing in the right place. Then you might have to be standing in the wrong place in your own life to understand how loved you are. And so we enter into a perplexity of that place where mystery holds us together. And I think that the only way out of perplexity is through doubt. Is this all there is? Is there more? And we begin to come to a place of harmony, a place of humility, a place of love. A place where we realize that the mystery of God in Christ holds us together. That we can have a faith that is beyond our doubt, that's necessary, that the map is bigger than the one that we've been given, And that it is okay, it's necessary for those of us that are struggling with our faith. That you can still belong. That you can still be loved. That you can still be walked with. Because I was walked with alongside when I was in the midst of my own crisis. And that we can move through simplicity, complexity, perplexity, and harmony. We can get to that place of a broadness. And those of you that are there are going to help those of us that aren't. Those of you that are in simplicity, moving to complexity, and you're kind of freaking out right now, you're in the right place. You don't have to hide. Those of you that are kind of standing in a place where God is much more mysterious than you ever imagined, much more connected than you ever thought possible, we need you to speak your experiences. Those of you that are standing in a place of harmony where there is it just makes sense without words. We need you to be patient with those of us that are in simplicity. We just need a little more time. Because to lose something that we thought was going to secure our life freaks us out. And we don't know how to say that often. And so we get real controlling. And we just need you to help us. That's the kind of community that we're building here. It's the kind of faith that Jesus will lead us along. You don't need more faith. What you have is enough. It'll do the job.